Have you ever wondered why your child melts down and goes into full-fledged tantrum tornado with the slightest bright light, loud noise, change in routine, new food, or that new outfit? Maybe they struggle to fall asleep and regulate their emotions in a major way when they're tired, or maybe they act like they're constantly tired all the time anyway. Moms and dads, if you've got an overly emotional and exhausted child on your hands nearly 24/7, this video is for you. And it's very likely your little one is struggling with sensory issues or sensory processing disorder. And we're here to help. So in this video, we'll break down what sensory issues in kids really are, the most common causes and triggers, and most importantly, what you can do to help your child calm and regulate their sensory issues once again. Before finding PX Docs, Tierney had extreme sensory processing challenges where she could only wear a couple of really loose-fitting dresses that didn't rub up against her skin. Seams, fabrics, eyeglasses, and even shoes were so overwhelming to her that it turned getting dressed into big meltdowns and severe anxiety. And at that time, Tierney's nervous system was so stressed out that her senses weren't communicating well with her brain. And it's like trying to listen to a radio station with a ton of static coming in. So Tierney felt the sensations of clothing at such a high volume that it sent her body into full-fledged fight or flight mode. Gas pedal, sympathetic mode, or other names for that. It wasn't just one instance that caused Tierney to have a stressed nervous system, but rather a buildup of stress over time, something that we call in the office the perfect storm. So Tierney was a colicky baby and had lots of ear infections, gut problems, sleep troubles, emotional regulation issues, and that stress eventually turned into this vicious cycle of sensory processing challenges and anxiety. But with specific neurologically focused chiropractic care, it calmed and coordinated her nervous system. Now Miss Tierney has a whole new wardrobe of clothes, shoes, and glasses, and at 10 years old, she finally celebrated wearing her very first pair of jeans. She's the sweetest, smartest, strongest little girl we know, and now she's absolutely thriving. She is also managing her anxiety and sleeping so much better. And even though the change of seasons and new school schedules can be stressful for Tierney, the adjustments help her get through those challenges and adapt much easier. So what Tierney has said about what she likes most about chiropractic is that it fixes the problem, right? Kids get it. And boy, do we love hearing that, because getting to the root cause of your child's struggles is always, always, always our goal. Sensory processing is a fundamental aspect of our interaction with the world around us. We are literally sensing machines, and that vast majority of it happens without us even really taking notice, subconsciously. So for most kids, heading out into the world to play in nature or meet new friends or try new things and experiences is supposed to bring joy and connection, but for some children, these seemingly small sensory interactions and experiences can be so overwhelming and anxiety-inducing that it sends their system into full-fledged fight or flight mode. Sensory issues affect nearly 1 in 6 kids, and that number grows and grows every day. And the biggest booms we see is right now, early fall, when the days are getting shorter, the temperatures are getting cooler, and school routines are starting to develop. So with kiddos who struggle with sensory processing disorder, change is the biggest trigger, and the toughest time is right now. Sensory processing issues are not normal, and kiddos do not grow out of it, but rather they grow into other things. The average medical doctor, provider, or pediatrician still today not only will often overlook sensory issues, but they might completely miss them in your child. And they will often dismiss it as completely normal and say things like, "Don't worry, they'll grow out of it," which simply is not the case. Sensory issues in a kiddo become anxiety in a teenager and even depression or complete exhaustion as an adult. So there's 2 main types of sensory processing disorders. One is hypersensitivity, and that's when these kiddos get overwhelmed with typical everyday sensations. These include auditory, so like mild sounds, dogs barking, busy streets, noisy classrooms; visual, which is like bright lights, flickering screens; tactile, which is certain fabrics, tags on clothes; or even lack of connective touch. So things like hugs or pats on the back will set them off. Olfactory, which is sensitivities to strong smell or even detergents, room diffusers, certain foods. And then gustatory, which is taste, textures. Certain foods might be causing high levels of sensitivity to your kiddos, which just makes mealtime an absolute joy, I know. Other kiddos may struggle with hyposensitivity, meaning they have a reduced response to sensory stimuli. These kids actually seek out sensory behaviors. They love deep pressure hugs, wrestling, crashing into furniture, swinging, spinning, rocking. That's hyposensitivity. Sensory issues can affect a child's education, learning, their social and emotional behaviors, their gut and immune health, and of course it can affect the dynamics of the family as well. So what contributes to these sensory processing disorders? Number one is premature birth and low birth weight. These have been associated with an increased risk of sensory processing difficulties, but one of the biggies even beyond that, it was something we see in like 80 to 90% of these cases, is stress on mom during pregnancy or birth intervention and trauma. Prolonged labors, use of forceps, vacuum extraction, C-sections, oxygen deprivation during delivery, and early use of medications and antibiotics may all contribute to these sensory processing disorders. That's a long, long list, I know, but point being, these stressors to a kiddo's nervous system early on are what contribute more so than anything else. So, what kind of coping mechanisms can mom and dad use to help with these sensory processing disorders, especially if you've tried it all already? Because most parents of sensory kids that we see in the office have already tried OT or breath work or yoga or sensory diets or supplements or other strategies to try and help improve their child's sensory issues, and they either have little or no success. So what if you've tried it all and your kiddo's either still struggling or that progress has plateaued? In order to fully address the root cause of sensory issues in kids, we highly recommend learning more about the sensory test and neurological stress scans that we run in our office every single day. We call them the insight scans. And most especially for these cases, we want to talk about the EMG. EMG is electromyography, so it's how much energy from our environment is running up through our nervous system and to our brain. So you can see here on Miss Cheyenne, her nervous system, our nervous system, is actually like a highway, right? And on Cheyenne's highway, she's just got way too much traffic going on. So it's clogging up the highway. So that information cannot get to the brain or back out to the environment in an orderly fashion. Remember, like I said earlier, it's like trying to fine-tune a radio station. So remember back when we actually had like the dials and you'd have all that static, and then you'd go over a station and you get that bleep of like clear, and then you'd kind of go back and forth until you got a clear signal. With sensory processing disorder, there's so much energy and stress and tension within the nervous system. Chiropractors call that subluxation, but there's so much of this subluxation within the nervous system that it's like having that static on your radio station at all times. So when we're trying to go through these typical daily activities of even just like listening to a dog bark or sitting down to do our homework or trying to pay attention and have a conversation with mom and dad, it's like you've got all this commotion going on up in your system, and that's why we have those sensory overloads and those behaviors. If you want to get some scans done for your kiddos, because if this is ringing a bell for you, give our office a call, a direct message, an email right away. We'll do some scans, some inside nervous system scans, and we will see what is going on within their nervous system, how we can help, and then we'll get them on that path to healing. Thanks.